Welcome to another episode of the Lightspeed Investing Podcast. I've got Steve Hamoen here. He is part of the 10x community, a beloved, that's right, a beloved network of mine. He is the host of the Money Mindset Mentoring Podcast, as well as the founder of podcastlaunch.ai. Steve, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm here sitting and talking with you, brother. I'm always in a good motion, but right now especially feeling great, brother. Really,
That's
really good.
that's
When
awesome.
we
Uh-huh.
met and we both had the exact same shirts on of just different vintages. I knew this was destined going to be an amazing
Dude,
podcast.
I know. We literally had 10x apparel on. It may have actually been the same cash flow hoodie.
It was a
And
cash flow, but you had the modern one. I had the OG one.
oh, you did? Okay.
Yours just looks so much better. I'm like, I got to upgrade my ride, man. I got
I
to
guess
get a new pair.
I came in 2017, so
Oh,
that
you
could.
actually came in before me then, which is actually
Oh,
funny.
really?
I think I joined, yeah, I joined 10X. Oh gosh, probably like 2024 maybe, 2023.
Mm.
Yeah,
And you're based out up in Canada,
Canada. Yeah,
right?
yeah, just outside of Toronto. Yeah,
Outside Toronto. It's awesome, man. Love speaking with my Canadians, you know.
you to boot it.
Well, we did a Scotiabank deal 6 years ago now, actually.
Nice.
For our first, I would say, bank deal as a firm. So that was a very lucrative endeavor for all of us. But of course, it was facilitated by no other than our Canadian friends, right?
Beautiful. Love it.
So,
Absolutely love it.
Steve, obviously we got to know each other a little bit, but you want to kind of share with the audience listening in, what your background is, how is it that you got
Mm.
into being the host of the Money Mindset podcast, as well as the founder of podcastlaunch.ai?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been always pedigree grown with a pedigree around entrepreneurship. My
Mm,
dad was an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. He started a credit union up here. My dad ran a construction business. He was an engineer, and so I always was really drawn towards the entrepreneurial environment. And my first foray into it was when I started a construction business to work side by side with my dad, and I ran that business, grew it up to about 20 employees. Some of the houses we were working on were 20 to 55,000 square foot homes. So these were monster houses. And so it was really exciting. You go into these palaces and talk to these absolutely unbelievable human beings. And so the network of the people that I knew at the time, it was profound. And I loved it. And I loved it until I didn't, which was 2014.
oh, okay.
And I loved it for a couple of reasons. Number one is I never had to market, right? People would just call me, we would just do deals, and we'd do their business, and it just worked, right? 2014 came around, and 2014 was a very rough year. Started off the year going very good, ended up the year with shutting the company down, um, $750,000 in the hole. My wife was pregnant at the time,
Oof.
and so she was off on mat leave. And I didn't, and I had to, I found jobs for everybody who worked for us because, money was tight at the time for a lot of people. There's massive inflation at the time. There was a lot of manufacturers' defects and weren't being honored by the manufacturers under warranty. And when you have fixed price contracts and you have massive inflation, there's no profit left. And then the icing on the cake was people stopped paying their bills, some of them. You only need one or two when it's contracts are that big to really create impact. And so I had to shut the business down. It was horrible. It was one of the toughest moments of my life because I loved what I did. And we were just doing such cool projects. So I had to figure out what I needed to do. So I had a lady who was my landlord for my commercial unit. We had about 4,000 square feet of commercial space. And she said, well, Steve, you're a good guy. Why don't you get your real estate license? And I said, real estate? Ugh, I don't know about a real estate agent. Those are the lowest scum of the earth, is what I said. And she's like, well, Steve, do you think I'm scum of the earth? And I'm like, no. And she says, well, then you don't have to be scum either. And turns out there's lots of amazing people in real estate. I got my real estate license, sold, I think it was around 40 some houses in my first year.
Mm,
And so it really blew up. And what I realized is I had it all wrong when I was running that construction business. Because what I did is in the construction business, I relied on referrals. I didn't rely on marketing. And if I would have had a better exposure to a larger volume of deals, I could have been a little bit more selective on the people that I worked with
mm,
rather than just working with the people that are in front of me.
yeah.
And so marketing is definitely senior to sales. That was actually really, really impacted on me when I went down to the Unbreakable Challenge and then subsequently joined to become a 10x business coach with Grant Cardone, because that is something that he pushes. Everybody thinks about Grant as sales, 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 the closer survival guide, and that sort of thing. But what he really does well is marketing,
Promoting.
promoting. The three
That's
P's of promote, promote,
yep.
promote, promote, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it, and sometimes it takes those struggles, to really showcase the hidden opportunity, right? If you're willing to find it.
I think everybody's going to run into a moment in their life where they're going to find a challenge that's going to feel that it could break them.
Hmm.
And those are the moments that can really define, who we are. When
Yeah,
we hit those things, we can either crumble in front of them, or we can use them as ammunition to be able to push us forward.
I'm with
Now,
you.
they don't have to be, these huge momentous moments like what I had back then. They could be a small moment of like you wake up in the morning and you sniffle a couple times. Does that throw off your day? And so if we get used to being able to overcome obstacles, obstacles just become another thing that feeds us. And that's
Well,
exactly what happened.
the other thing too, I don't know if you were at the last GrowthCon, like this most recent one, but
Yeah.
like there's a compilation of speakers saying the same message in different ways, right? But like for me, the core thing is like success is never linear, right? But it's not necessarily a roller coaster. Like it's not like, in trading we call them single candlestick patterns, right? But it's more like, let's say you're on that rise, but you may experience a little bit of a dip, and then you go
Yeah.
up and you come back down. You go up, come back down. It was so funny. Like when I had the opportunity to first become president and CEO, I was talking to my buddies. I'm like, all right, so I feel great, but it's like I technically haven't done anything because if you ask me, hey, what's your biggest achievement so far? I'm like, I earned my way into becoming a CEO of this private investment firm. And then I'm like, yeah, but then now it's like after that, I need to start. It's like the canvas is blank right now. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So it's
That's
just
right.
like kind of those funny things. It's like, oh, you just got into the league, right? NBA, MLB, NFL, whatever. And it's like, but have you played a game yet? What's your numbers? So
That's right.
so you still haven't done anything, right? You know what I mean? It's like those little ups and downs within, your ascensions, as you
Yeah.
keep pushing through. So
I think you hear that a lot when people, they graduate from university and they come out. I had this happen all the time when I ran a sales organization back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I used to go around the world and I trained salespeople. I think I probably trained thousands of sales reps. And when we're hiring, the people would be like, I want to leverage, they'd be from Harvard or whatever, and they're like, I want to leverage my degree from Harvard. It's like that sounds so gross to me. It's like it's great. You went to Harvard, cool. Who are you as a person? Right? And you've got to that position, and what are you going to do with it? One of the things that I find is like, just like on your podcast, you probably have a lot of amazing people who come on the podcast and they talk a little bit of great things, and your listeners are going to listen to those. And some of them are just going to be, it's going to go in one ear and out the other one. The responsibility of when you learn on something resides in somebody actually giving the information, but more important, somebody ingesting that information and then doing something with it.
hmm
So
it's
now
so
you got
funny.
the CO title. It's like, what are you going to do with it?
It was yeah, I know. Well, that was like one of those things. And then now I'm here, obviously we're growing, we're expanding, but there's definitely moments because we're in business, where
Yeah,
business kicks you in the head, things not necessarily going your way all the time, sometimes, whatever it is, things that you think would happen, being delayed, whatever it is, right? But you just gotta, stick with it. Because I
yeah,
mean, I recently just kind of went through this as we were revamping all of our online assets. So I just find
yep,
myself in this little like limbo purgatory period. I'm like, I know that we're in this transition phase, so kind of things are kind of like at a standstill. But I'm like, so how do I keep myself busy during this time period? You know what I mean? Like, then I gotta start getting creative again. But hey, if you're
yep.
committed, right, the creativity will come to you.
That's exactly right. Creativity doesn't come out of this moment of like eureka. It comes out of being committed to being creative.
Yeah. So
And it's like when I podcast, one of the things that I love about podcasting is my commitment to creativity is that every conversation that I have, I'm open to learning something. I go in with an agenda that I want to make really good content for the podcast, for the money mindset mentoring podcast. But really, what I also want to do is come out with like, did I learn something from that individual? Like when we were talking with yours, then we were talking about the idea of looking at commodities and futures and all these things that I dabbled in a little bit, but really never had any good advice around it. So I kind of shied away from it. It opened up a little bit of a moment in my brain to say, hey, that's something that maybe I need to take a look at and consider again because it sounded interesting. And I'm a nerd for numbers and for graphs and for algorithms. And so it really spoke to me on a level. But it's the idea is that's what happens when you go out and you start connecting with people. And that's why I love podcasting because I can go and I can learn and I can grow.
Yeah, and that's actually a great segue because I was going to ask you, from your construction experience and then your real estate agent, and it sounds like you have some sales training experience too,
Mhm.
why of all marketing modalities, the podcast? Because
Yeah,
some
that's a
people,
great.
right, some people they lead in really hard on being a content creator, right? And they're just
Mhm.
posting. Like, and so for me, I have a natural outgoing personality, and this is not only enjoyable, but like for me, effortless because it's the one marketing modality out of all of them that I'm like, I can do that day in and day out, and it's no issue, But I'm kind of curious to hear your take. I know you.
Yeah, so what I've done is I've broken it out that there's really four categories that you can win. And I'm going to say there's a fifth bonus one that you can win in podcasting. In the four categories of this is number one, you create content and you create long form content. And long form content is super valuable because you can take that long form and you can cut it and slice it and dice it. Grant Cardone does a beautiful job of this. He'll do an event and that's like his content for the next 6 months, or even the next 6 years. Heck, he'll drop it in a Kajabi and sell it back to you again a second time. And so there's ways that he does it, and he's not on Kajabi anymore. He's in another system, but
Yeah.
but
But it can
anyway,
be
so there's
bundled in a different way, is what you're
it can
saying.
be bundled in a different way. So having content is really important. So if you have somebody comes on, say for example, you come as a guest on my show, which you did, and we create great content together. That is awesome because I can win in the long term. When I talk about winning in the long term, this means that I'm not looking to make dividends today on that, but that is something that I'll make dividends later on. I'm kind of storing wealth. I call it attention wealth.
Mm,
And so you can win on that one with the C, which is the content of attention wealth. The next thing that you can do on is the second C you can win on, which is community. Look, you come on my podcast and you're like, hey, I was just on Steve's podcast. And you send me and you send off to your group, when the release comes out, hey, we're releasing this podcast I was on, boom, 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 boom. That creates new eyeballs for my podcast. That's a community. So if it gives you access to a community of other people, this is why having guests on your show are extremely important. It gives you access to access to that community because you're going to collaborate. This is how like we talked about Pete Vargas and Grant Cardone sharing their thing. Amy Porterfield does a great job at that, which
mm.
is she gets into collaboration with a lot of people. And so there's really good ways of collaborating.
That's
Mel
right.
Robbins, awesome for collaborating.
Yeah.
And so that community side of things is huge. So you can get access to it. Now I've been throwing the third way, which is collaboration. So
Hmm.
not only can you get into the community, but maybe you can do collaboration. So Pete Vargas and Grant weren't actually just sharing community; they were actually in collaboration.
That's
They
right.
built at that 10x stages environment, or Brandon Dawson. They built at the 10x 360. And so the idea is you can get into collaboration to put together offers. And in doing so, there's the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. The last one, which is the C, which is the easiest way to win on podcasting, is you find a client, somebody actually does business with you. So, say for example, a guest comes on your show and says, "Hey, I'm just going through and I'm changing all my digital assets." And say you happen to own a business that does digital assets and can help somebody because we're a big integrator of Go High Level. Then you can have somebody say, "Hey, look, guess what? You could be a client of ours, and we'll help you with all that process, make it seamless, so you can go back and focusing on your business." And if that's a win-win for everybody, that turns into something that's a great relationship to build out and grow. And those
Yeah.
four reasons are the reason to podcast. The fifth bonus one is the one that you said before, is you're going to grow as an individual in the process. You're going to grow in the way that you can speak. You're going to grow in the way that you can listen. You can become a really good listener and ask really great questions. And they're going to grow as an individual because you're going to learn something from the
So
really
would
great
you would you
people.
say the fifth C would be communication?
Yeah, I guess I could throw it as communication, but you see, communication, it's it's even deeper than that. I got to try to find another word, but you're going in the right direction because I'd almost sort of communication and connection,
Hmm.
right? And you could probably
Yeah.
throw those two, and I think that would summarize it. So
Yeah.
I'm liking what you
You
did
got
there.
content, community, collaboration. Uh, um, I'm blanking on the last one, on the fourth one.
The
The last one,
client,
fourth one, client, and then
yeah,
uh communication and connection. Yeah,
yeah. I think that's great. There we
that's
go. We
great.
just
But
fleshed out
now,
the last
are
two.
these five your own, or did you kind of, take some of, what you
You know,
learned?
I it's because I love podcasting. I wanted to find out why. And it's like right now, one of the big things that I'm working on internally is trying to find out how you can take somebody who's a zero performer and get them into a hero mode, and how could you do it as quickly as possible, irrespective of modality. So if it's in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is one of my passions, perfect. If it's in business, sales, marketing, HR, compliance, whatever it is, how do we take them from zero to hero?
So
And it's looking at all the different modalities of how to train, support, and help somebody grow.
is that going to be more relevant to the mindset mentoring or podcast, or is that the podcast launch.ai? Like, what is the
Yeah,
difference
so
too?
yeah, so that one, so the podcast is we help people grow and start their podcasts. And part of that is you're going to run into systematic walls, but those are pretty easy to solve. But what you generally run into is the Pareto principle. And the Pareto principle is one of the most dangerous things that plagues every single industry. Mortgage
80/20.
brokers, investors, you got it. That's right. 80% of the people are going to try something are going to fail miserably. 20% are going to succeed marginally. And of that, probably only 1 or 2% are actually going to really massively succeed. So that means that of the people who, start a podcast, we know there's a certain failure rate in the industry. We just got to be better than the
Well, how do
failure
you,
rate.
okay, hold on 1 second. What is exactly, failure in this case defined as?
Yeah, so I define it very succinctly. Um, are you making money from podcasting
And are you saying that as a direct thing, or are you talking about, are you making money on the back end, like because of your podcast? You know what I mean?
as a result of your
As a
podcast?
result. Okay, yeah. So not
Yeah.
like people are paying to listen to your podcast, but more so is what happens after they listen.
The amount of people that get that paid to listen. Have you ever paid to listen to a podcast? Okay, so there, that tells you that story. And most people don't pay to listen to podcasts. They'll pay to join communities, they'll pay to take courses, they'll pay
Mhm.
to get training, they'll pay for software. They're not going to pay for the
I
podcast.
guess the only thing
And
close is Audible for the audiobooks, but that's not really a podcast.
yeah, but that's a book. That's a little bit different. But a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of books right now are being just given away. Like the book funnel is from Russell Brunson, is a wonderful way for people to be able to, as a lead magnet,
Hmm.
give them value. And it's funny because when people listen to what I'm saying, so if you're listening to this podcast, you're saying it sounds very salesy. It's like, no, salesy is actually a good thing because you're trying to sell somebody. Because on the other side of that transaction is exactly what they're looking for and is exactly what you're looking for. And your job is just to get them there and to first get somebody to pay attention to you, and so that they can say is instead of leading with like, do you want the red pen blue pen stuff, that kind of crap. What's better is just to give them good stuff, so it builds trust. So the idea of a sales funnel around a book, what a great way to build trust, so that they're like, wow, I think this person's a great person. Because I can tell you, when I first got into Grant, maybe back when you first did, when in 2017, I wasn't a big Grant fan, and I didn't like Grant at all. I thought he was just too over the top for me, just too pushy and all these other things. But then once I got deeper into the system, I was like, oh my God, actually he's got some really good content. Holy crap, he actually really cares about his people. And you know this because you know how long they've been with him for.
Yeah,
And there
for
would have
me,
been
when I
massive
started,
turnover otherwise.
I dipped my toes in the water, right? So I did the small things like the books, the audiobooks. I was just coming out of college. I mean, I ran
Mm,
into Grant literally the last semester, coming out of my last semester in college, basically.
mm.
So I just wanted to get some real world like wisdom,
Yeah,
and mentorship. But obviously, I had to uh conduct myself with the proper risk management, right? So I started with the small things. It
yeah,
started to make sense, and I started seeing some results from it. Then I'm like, okay, well let's go in a bit more. Then I think I
yeah,
did the like wealth creation playbook. That was like
Yeah.
my first $500 purchase. And then it just like expanded from there, like from, 2 digits to three, then four, then the five-figure stuff. And then the in-person events, obviously. Right.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to start somewhere. And it helps if you provide value. So for you, then in regards to the podcastlaunch.ai, right? Your number one metric is, helping people create a podcast that allows them to get some back end, clients, right?
Well,
However,
let's talk even before then, because I want to, before we get to the idea of getting clients, because clients, that's obviously the ultimate thing. But the first thing you want to get is the most valuable currency in the world if you're running a business, which is attention.
mm,
Money follows attention. That's one of the most important statements that you can know is money follows attention. So if you maximize the attention that you're going to get, you're going to maximize the amount of revenue that's going to be presented to you that you can choose who to do business with.
that's
See,
right.
back in the day when I didn't do marketing, what happened was the people that were sitting in front of me, the people that I was going to do business with. But now I can choose the people that I want to do business with because we have attention.
Absolutely.
And so it's really, really important. I think you were saying the other day for your programs that you're like, I want to make sure that this person's a right fit. I don't do business with everybody. And it's the same thing for us, is we want to make sure it's a right fit.
Well, but there's another caveat, right? And having my time in business that I recognize too is attention is great, but if you don't have a compelling offer, right? If you don't have the
Yeah.
offer structured, right, so that you can present it. Because here's the thing, with a really irresistible offer, it doesn't take that much marketing and sales effort to get the deal done because the offer practically sells itself. But if you have on the extreme end, like a really bad offer, you could have world-class marketing and world-class salespeople, and it's like trying, to move the needle, to trying to find water in the desert because it's just so hard to push that bad offer because it's inherently a bad offer. So when you help people with the podcast launch, let's say if they're beginners and they just want to get attention, great. But what about the offer part? Are they coming in,
Yeah.
or do you help them as well, with that?
Yeah. So the offer, you hit the nail on the head. And so when somebody joins one of our groups, and one of the things that we realize very quickly is they want to convert, but they don't have a mechanism to convert, which is, first of all, from I think it was Russell Brunson who said this. He talks about a road without traffic is useless. Well, traffic without a road is not good either. And so what you need to do is you need to have the systems and models to be able to convert. And one of those systems and models is your offer. And if you don't have that offer right, you don't have it so that it's, as you say, it's insatiable. It's the SIID, which is silly if I don't offer. Sitting there like, oh my gosh, I would lose money for not buying
Right.
this.
The no-brainer
The
presentation.
no-brainer offer. Yeah, it's got to be a no-brainer offer. And that's a beautiful offer to have. And so helping people unpack that is, first of all, they have to figure out who they do business with. And the biggest problem that I run into most of the time is people say everybody.
I
It's
know,
like,
right?
well, then you don't have an offer. Like
Yeah.
the only
You
way you're going to
get
sell
to
to
work
everybody
with
is,
everyone once you have identified and done great work for a specific niche. Like
that's right.
you do not get that. That's a privilege.
Yep.
When you look at
Yep.
these bigger established people like Alex Hermosi and Grant Cardone, and they are now working with entrepreneurs of different industries, it's because they have owned their respective niche, right? I think Hermosi was the gym owner space. He figured
Yep.
out literally exactly how to, help gym owners become successful business owners in that sense, in that
Yep.
industry. And then he's like, I noticed a lot of, business acumen and principles that would translate to other industries. And that's how it happened.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and that's exactly it, is you find that niche and then you grow from it. And people says like, if you get stuck in a niche, you're gonna miss all this opportunity. But
Mhm.
if you get into a niche, and you could have, I mean, I've got a bookkeeping business, we've got a podcasting business, a mortgage business, a real estate business, a business brokering business. Like we have all of these different business. We have an AI business that, answers phones and, decks, all this stuff. So, you know, you can have all of those things, but those all address specific verticals. And
And for
so
you,
we
in
have,
your case, are they connected as well? They're
of
connected.
course they are. Yeah, of course they're connected, because
Okay,
the
they're
thing
connected.
is wallet share. Like to me, if you're going to build out a business, the easiest person to sell to is the person you've sold to already. And if you've already done business with them, you already like them, generally speaking. And if they're still doing business with you, it's going to be really easy to do more business because they're
Now,
probably going
just
to do business.
for the listeners, listening in, connected business is basically like businesses that add on to each other, right? They complement. They don't take away additional bandwidth. Like, Steve, everything that he just listed, it makes sense because if you're in real estate and you have AI, services taking phone calls for you, right? Like that makes sense. So you
Yeah,
just, you know what I mean? It's not like you're like running a private investment firm and then you're trying to start a food franchise, right? It's just like totally different because that one's brick and mortar. Everything we do over here is digital,
yeah,
right? You know what I mean?
yeah, that's right. Exactly. And we have clients in different spaces, like in the food space, for example. Um, but our businesses that we own are all adjacent that we can cross sell.
Hmm.
And because most business owners will want to invest into real estate at some point. And most people who invest in real estate, might want to have a business at some point. And so having that ability to cross over is super awesome.
Yeah. Now I know we're coming up at the top of the hour here. So as a distinction to the audience, right? You being the host of Money Mindset Mentoring, as opposed to the podcast launch, uh, I guess, for you, uh, you want to talk about the specifics and, how you get involved with people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so if somebody wants to find my podcast, you can either go on Apple, Spotify, or anything, and they can find it, or you can just search my name on YouTube and you can find it. Just type my name into the internet, you'll find me everywhere. And so that's pretty easy to do. In regards to podcastlaunch.ai, if you're thinking that you're the world's best kept secret right now and you're tired of that feeling, and you know that you've got something that you need to give to the world, and you love the idea of connecting with people, you love the idea of from building out content together, collaborating, finding clients, really communicating with people. The two bonus ones we just put together today on this show. And if you like that, then podcast launch is where you need to go, because at the end of the day, money follows attention. And attention is one of the most valuable currencies you can have to create dramatic impact in your business. And we'll
And
walk you through on how to take that impact and convert that into revenue.
yeah, and I was gonna ask, if they are, let's say, beginning and they don't have their offer dialed in, do you help them with their offer too?
100%. Yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
that's one of my, to be honest, I would say that's probably my superpower is I love helping people. I love talking people through their offers and really
It's
helping them
fun,
turn
isn't
it.
it? It's
It
fun. I
is
know. I
100%
love it
fun.
too. That's like literally like what I do pretty much every single day. I'm just like in
So
my
much
head.
fun.
I'm like,
It's
oh,
so
what,
much fun.
what am I doing?
Yeah.
That's how our firm's been able to expand, in terms. But obviously, there's offers that actually stick, and some of it I'm just like, I'm just living in imaginary land, right? Having my own fun. But it
Yeah, but
sounds
then,
to me,
but that's massive. That's massive. Imperfect action beats perfect planning. And that's really important to note, because you're like, some of them are going to be great, some of them aren't going to work. I mean,
yeah.
we had a couple kickoffs that we did last year that just didn't fire off. And so what? We'll just keep on going.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So it sounds to me in the audience, right? Like the podcast launch.ai is for someone wanting to get out there, but they don't necessarily know how to. The
Yeah.
money mindset mentoring, right? That's where maybe, you're a bit more established and
Yeah.
you kind of also, right, in in conjunction to getting to know them better, right? They have something to promote as well on your podcast. So that's
Yeah. So if they want to get their voice heard, they can certainly look up podcastlaunch.ai/Steve Hamoen, I think is what it is. But just reach out and try to find out. You can book to be a guest on my show. We actually manage about 100 shows. We put out 5,000 episodes last year. So we're really about getting people to get attention. And so it's really important that you do that and just get involved, get into action, and get into doing things, because inaction doesn't lead to anything. Inaction does.
That's right. I think I remember from back in the day when I was like studying entrepreneurship before I headed off to entrepreneurship. There was the statue of like the thinker philosopher, and then
Yeah,
there's like the other statue, but the statue is gone. You just see footprints, and then it's like there was a sign that is like one of those comedy things. Like a sign is like I'm busy doing it.
that's right. Yeah,
And then you have
totally.
you have like Play-Doh right here, like the other
The
one.
thinker and the doer.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
got it. I
yeah.
love it.
Great,
I
man.
love
Well,
it.
hey, Steve, it was a pleasure having you on
Thanks,
today.
man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you at GrowCon in the diamond seats, okay?
Dude, man, let's rock it out. It's gonna be so much fun. Can't
All right.
wait.
All
Thanks,
right. Thanks.
brother.
Yeah, you take care.
Thank you.